Hey guys, so in this lecture we are going to be covering loops, and before getting more into the detail, let me just tell you that loops can execute a block of code a number of times. Loops are very handy if you want to run the same code over and over again with a different value, of course. So there are four types of loops that we have in JavaScript. Let's see them. So the first one is a for loop. The next is a for/in loop. The next is a while loop, and then there is a do while loop. So what is a for loop? Well, for loop loops through a block of code a number of times. Simple, right? For in loop loops through the properties of an object, which basically means if an object has like 5 different properties, first name, last name, middle name, age, etc., it will loop through the properties of that object, and I'll show you that in the details. The while loop loops through a block of code while a specified condition is true. Similarly, a do while loop will execute till the condition is true, but there is also a condition that it will execute the first time without even checking the condition, and that's why it's called do and then a while. So let's see for loops in this section, and the while and the do while will be covered in the next video. So the for loop is often the tool you will use when you want to create a loop. The syntax for a for loop. What will be the syntax of a for loop? Let's see the syntax for a for loop. For statement 1 semicolon statement 2 semicolon statement 3, and then you open the bracket, you close the bracket, and you can execute the code block to be executed. So very simple. You give a statement, and then a block of code to execute. So statement 1 is executed before the loop starts. So you will do any kind of initialization pretty much in this particular statement. Statement 2 defines the condition for running the loop. Basically, till this condition is met, this loop will continue to run. Basically, a true or a false condition, and if the derivation or the condition derived will return a true, the loop will continue to run. Statement 3 is executed each time after the loop, which means if you want to do any closing actions, just like a closing act. So you can increment some variables out here. We will see that in an example. So let's print numbers 1 to 10 in a loop. Let's close the output. Let's open the console. Let's write a for loop. Let's initialize a variable 0. Let's say I should be less than equal to, well, I should be less than 10. I'll tell you why. And I plus plus. And then start the loop. Let's do a console.log of I. Simple, right? Let's run this, and you should see 0, 1, 2, 9. But we want 1 to 10. In that case, you can do a plus 1 and get the answer. Or you can, instead of doing this, initialize I to 1 and make it either less than 11 or less than equal to 10. In this case, also you will get the answer as the same. Now, if you see the statement 1, which is I is equal to 1 or I is equal to 0 as we started, sets a variable before the start of the loop. Statement 2 defines a condition which returns a true or a false, and depending on the condition, the console.log gets printed out. Statement 3 increases a value, which is plus plus, each time the code block in the loop has been executed. Now, let's see these statements a little in detail. Normally, you will use statement 1 to initialize the variable used in loop. In this scenario, it was I is equal to 1. But this is not always the case. JavaScript doesn't care. Statement 1 is actually an optional if you have declared your variables somewhere else or before the loop starts. So let's see another example. Let's remove this and put it here. Variable I is equals to this, and let's try to run this. You can see it still executes, and I haven't given anything in statement 1. Although the semicolon is needed so that JavaScript knows that there was a statement 1 before it. And this is statement 2 and not statement 1. Now you can do this, or you also have an option. Let me comment this out. You also have an option to have multiple initializations out here. So let's say you want to do create a variable cars is equals to an array. So you can do this. You can do BMW, Mercedes, Ford, Honda. Now you can do an initialization here where you can have another variable length is equals to cars dot length, and you can have I should be less than length. In this scenario, it will get you cars of I. Let's try to run this. And the answer is this. Now the problem is I'm starting I with 1. Whenever you're looping through an array, the initialization should be I is 0. Now let's clear this and run this. And the answer would be, because I have a less than equal to. So I should be less than. Okay. So I should be equal to 0 and I should be less than length. And then you can execute this, because arrays usually have 0 to the length, which means 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will be 0, 1, 2 and 3. Now let me just go back to the previous loop and create this as a separate loop so that you have a reference to both. Okay. Okay. So here we have both the loops. Now statement 2, which is I is less than length or I is less than equal to 10, these usually are the conditions that are evaluated of the initial variable. Now this is not the case all the time. JavaScript doesn't care. Statement 2 is also an optional statement. If statement 2 returns true, the loop starts over again. If the statement returns a false, the loop will end. So if you omit statement 2, like if you do not give a statement 2, you must specify a certain way to stop the loop. And the way we stop the loop is using the break command. Now we've already seen break during the switch case. We will also cover break in a later detail. But if you end up doing something like this, true, you don't know when will the value be stopping. So in that case, you need to make sure that you break the loop sometime in certain condition. Otherwise, your browser may crash. Similarly, statement 3, which is I++, it increments the value of the initial variable which you assigned here, or probably outside the loop, whichever is the case. But this may not always be true. Again, JavaScript has this position or this statement as an optional too. Statement 3 can also be anything. It may not be an I++ all the time. It can also be an I minus minus, or it can be an I plus 10, or it can be an I into 2 plus 10, or whatever. You can have any kind of an incrementation. As long as the condition is met, it will execute. So the first time the condition I0, it will meet, and the next time at the end of the loop, whatever your logic is, that will get executed, and it will again check for the condition. If the condition is met, it will go inside the loop and execute the block of code. If the condition is not met, it will not execute that particular code. So that was for loop. Now what is for in loop? Let's see another example. We have a variable person is equals to an object which is first name John, last name, let's say Doe, age, let's say 25, and middle name, let's say S. Smith, let's give it Smith. Okay. Now the for in loop is written like this. So for, you say X in person, and where X stands for the keys in the person object. So the key is first name, last name, age, and middle name. So to loop through all these 4 and give us a value. So let's try to print it out. So let's print out x because we need to know what x is and whatever it contains at that particular position. So we will do a person of x and try to run this. Let's clear the console, run it, and you should see first name is John, last name is Doe, age is 25, middle name is Smith, where this is x and this is the value of x. So that's how you can use a for loop to either loop through an array or an object using a for in loop.